Hi, this is Angena, Hageman, and Kim Musser, and you're listening to College, Is It Worth It? Hi, guys. I'm here with special guest Paul Miller and my classmate, Kim Musser. And today we're going to be talking about the cost of online college versus on-campus college. So one of our first things that we're going to talk about, Kim, is which costs more? And I want to welcome you. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
I had been researching online schools for a while. I had a little bit of a concern that it wasn't viewed in the same manner. My initial inspiration to consider an online school was the convenience and also the possibility that it would not cost as much. But I'm lucky that I did choose a brick and mortar school with online options. And you know, as we go through here and talk at some of the things we found in our research, you know, you will be too as a Central Penn student. Yeah. So I'm excited to talk about it. But if I had gone to college in 1993 when I graduated high school, according to my chart here from the National Center for Educational Statistics, my degree possibly would have been around $15,000.
Wow.
So today, of course, we're getting up towards $25,000?
Wow.
$25,000 for a 4-year degree.
And is that for online or for the traditional?
I think online, in my experience, the online schools, like just online schools, weren't very far from regular college tuition. And so that's when I looked at the value of it, which we'll talk about in the next segment.
I discovered I had printed a Forbes article from Derek Newton, and I read that there's a lot of hidden cost with online schools. And in today's day and age, it's almost comparable to the traditional brick and mortar school.
Right. Like you have your tech fees. What other fees do we have, Mr. Miller?
I would have honestly no clue about the fees, to be perfectly honest with you.
But they seem normal when you have a tech fee.
I have some statistics here. You have the cost of books and traveling to school. You have the gas cost. There's a lot of different fees that you don't really counter in when you're looking at the actual price of the online schooling.
Well, so yeah, coming from the perspective of a adult student, we're all adults, but not a live on campus student. You're saying that the price you would have to factor in the cost of travel, right, and other expenses for that as well. That you might not have it on online school, but I was reading that sometimes the brick and mortar schools charge a little bit more for their online options because they have to develop them. So they put a lot of money into the research and the development of the online options. So sometimes it may cost a little more.
Yeah,
but,
I agree.
That hasn't been the case here. I do a blend of online and on-campus school, only from the sheer point, and that's another lead into our third segment, which is helping you pay for school with grants, scholarships, or loans. College is going up a little bit higher than regular, inflation. So, where inflation might be, 2.4%, the tuition's going up like 3.4%.
Yeah, for online schooling, it does look like that the average student will typically spend anywhere between $100 to $400 per credit, whereas, and that's in a less expensive school. If you go to somewhere like Harvard, you can, or do that online or traditional, you're spending a lot more than that. So I guess it just depends on the type of school that you're attending as well. That would make a difference in the cost?
Yeah, I mean, I always had the local schools, and I failed miserably at my SATs. I didn't fail it, but did you take SATs?
I never took an SAT before.
I did, and I was like,
I was afraid to take the SAT.
I really was I'm a straight A student. Yeah. I got straight A's in algebra, all that stuff. But when I took my SATs, I felt like there's like a skill involved with it besides like your knowledge. It's almost like there's a skill involved with taking that. And I was just mortified at my score, and I never retook it.
I'm just not a good test taker, so that's why.
I got better at it, but not the SATs are set up different. And my parents weren't really sending me to school. I got a scholarship from a two-year college.
I just feel like the online schooling is a lot more feasible for older adults, especially if you have a family. And paying for it is, you have options for grants and loans that are deferred while you're in school. You don't have to pay for those. If you do pay for them, there is a benefit in paying while you're in deferment, because it brings down the interest. And that's a big thing for a lot of people. I don't think they know that the interest on these school loans, it really does accumulate when you're not paying on it while you're in school. If you have the option, such as myself, being a working adult, I just feel like it's easier to pay for it while I'm working, putting money on it every month to make sure that interest doesn't raise extremely high. Because at the end of my schooling, I'll probably looking at $32,000 or more in student debt. And I just want to bring down the interest rate on that. So
it's a toss-up for me whether or not, it would have been better to go to school back then or now. I mean, I could have racked up the student loans like many kids are doing today. The children of the Gen X, they didn't save. I didn't have savings for my kids to go to college, so we have to figure out another way to do it. And my son goes to Westchester, and he has specific feelings. It would be interesting to have his perspective on that, his view of the value of school, which is coming up in the next segment. But the options that are available, but when you have parents that make more than a specific amount of money, you are stuck getting loans and paying for it out of pocket. So these kids are going to be living with us till they're 30 years old because they can't afford a mortgage. Right. So it's an unfortunate situation. But
yeah, so as far as which school costs more, I'm leaning towards it depends on what school you attend.
So you're saying it's the value of what you're getting out of it. Like, yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean,
if I could get a free Harvard education, sign me up.
Yeah, a lot of places, I mean, like say you have a basketball scholarship to a school. They don't have to really pay anything. So, but that's going to lead us into our next segment, the value of online college versus on campus, the actual value of that. So again, you're listening to Angena and Kim, and is college really worth it? This is Angena Hageman, and you're listening to College, Is It Really Worth It? Welcome back. You're listening to Kim and Angena, and our segment is on value of online college versus on campus. We have Professor Paul Miller here. We're going to ask him a couple questions. Hi, Professor Miller. How are you today?
I am doing well, and I apologize for not having more insight on the fees. I do know that the fees do vary depending on what program you're in. A lot of times those fees are actually dependent on the program. I know, for example, certain departments might have a lab fee. For example, like we don't, but it would make sense if we might have a lab fee on this because this equipment's expensive. We don't do that. It's the nightly news is equipment, but so it does depend a lot on the fee. So I do apologize that I didn't give you a little bit more insight.
That's okay. We kind of just threw that at you too. It wasn't like we prepared you for that. So
it's all right. I'm used to it.
That's understandable. I do want to ask you though, do employees view online degrees differently? So if you're going to a job interview and you say, for example, I'm just using an example here, I have a degree from Phoenix. Is that viewed differently from, like, for say a college that has a campus and online mixed together versus maybe just online? Or how do you view that? Or do you have any information about that?
Just in speaking with employers, because one thing I do as the instructor of communications here is I'm the internship coordinator as well. So it's my job to go out into the community and work with a lot of these employers. The bottom line about the difference between online and on-ground education really has to do with what else you're doing. To me, I think some of those University of Phoenix types don't have, and there's others, SNHU, Western Governors University. There's nothing, I'm not saying anything bad about those. I'm sure they're all wonderful places. I've just spoken with people directly in the community, employers, that say that they don't necessarily value those. Now, in a situation like where most campuses today have online and on-ground classes, I think that it's often tough for the individuals hiring to even know whether you went online or not. Also, there's two schools of thought. Number one, if you're going to school online, that actually can be a positive because a lot of times the individuals will think that you have better time management skills if you're going to school online,
right?
Which I didn't, really think about until I started thinking about this podcast. But also, it's what can you do? Okay, so if you went to school online, the number one question they're probably going to ask you is, can you give me some proof that you can work collaboratively with people? Because that's the knock on a lot of online schools, is that you're just working so independently, and frankly, collaboration at the workplace is very important.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that's so odd. When I read that same information, that's an odd thing to defer from someone going to school online, because the reason they choose it is a lot of times they're adults and they have so many other responsibilities, and it's their only option to further their education. I don't know. I just don't get why the employers would think, well, they're like these little hermits sitting in front of a computer or something, and they don't know how to communicate with people or something.
I think a lot of it has to do with part of what you're learning, especially in our field, is working together. I know that I always get a lot of pushback from students when I have group projects, but to be honest, part of the reason that I do that is because you have to have some positive experiences working in a group setting. And I do think that, frankly, whether you went to school online or whether you went to an on-ground in the classroom, they're still going to ask you that question about your collaboration skills. So you should be prepared for that question anyway. I think that if it is obvious that you went to a notorious online school, that question might be raised a lot sooner, and hope that you have a lot more detailed answer.
Yeah, I think the name of the school, if an employer recognizes the name of the school, I think that's helpful too. Like in this area, our school is known by a lot of employers. If I move to New York, they may not know the name of the schools, so it's not as much value as going to this school and staying in this area.
I think that's a wonderful point. I think regionally, now look, I'm all about, people could do whatever you want, do whatever fit works for you. But if you're asking me specifically, I always wanted to, I never really wanted to venture outside of the state for college, because I went to Slippery Rock, which is in Pennsylvania, but even people around here are like, what's Slippery Rock? Where's Slippery Rock? Now, it's much more well known than it maybe was when I, was looking at it 20 years ago, but Slippery Rock is known in this area.
It is.
If I were to go to Washington State, they would have no idea. So right. I do think that there is an advantage that even if you are going to go online, to do it regionally. I think that's got a lot to do with the value that you're going to get away from it. Also, I think it's important to try to stay near where you want to end up. If you have a desire to go to New York City to work, you might want to go to school in that area, not necessarily in New York City alone, but whether it's going to SUNY or whether it's going to somewhere in Jersey or Philly, right. You want the employer to recognize the rigor and quality of a program. Mm-hmm. And if they can't do that, there's often a lot of other questions that are going to come along with it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So I wanted to just mention this white paper that I found. It's called The Market Value of Online Degrees as a Credible Credential. And what was interesting was they kind of divvied up the participants to be mostly healthcare related, it was a very sparse kind of grouping, but there was less than 100 participants, and then they broke them down by age and such. But what the main point was found is that it depends on who you ask. So if I went to the University of Phoenix and I'm a manager and I'm hiring someone, then I'm going to think that that online person in the interview is going to be just as good as a campus person. So I think once more people with the online degrees start to saturate the market and become the people, the decision makers, then there's going to be more even keel on the view. I value the fact that when I graduate, my degree will say Central Penn. They will not need to know how many of those classes I took online and how many I took in person.
Well, and honestly, at this point, even when I was in college, we took some classes online. Now, online was very new then, but even me, when I was in grad school, I took most of my classes on campus, but I took several classes online, and never once was I asked, which classes did you take online and which classes did you take on ground? So I think that the question here is kind of difficult because almost every college has online class now. I think what the question is as a person, are you able to find the desire to persist through online classes? Because I've taught every modality you can imagine. I've taught 8 o'clock a.m. classes. I've taught 8 o'clock p.m. classes. I've taught online, on ground, 6 to 9, 6 to 10, 2-hour blocks, 3-hour blocks. I mean, literally every type of possible modality that you could teach. And really, all that matters is, are you willing to do the work? Are you willing to try to get yourself outside of your comfort zone? And are you willing to go that extra mile? And to be honest, I don't care if you're online or on ground. That's really all that matters to me. And I think a lot of people who don't succeed at school, unfortunately, their priorities aren't in line to be successful and finish that program.
It seems like this basically just said, whoever's in the decision maker is going to be the one to, view it positively or not. But what you mentioned was the modality. Certain modalities would lend itself to online versus campus. Like, for instance, if Hack offered a nighttime nursing program that actually qualified for financial aid, I'd be a nurse. But they didn't do that. Their program is 5 credits, so it doesn't qualify for financial aid. So I had to come to, a Central Penn and give myself the option, to get my degree another way. Well, you can't get an online nursing degree unless you're already a nurse. You can go for your bachelor's or your master's. So some modalities, maybe the face-to-face type stuff.
Yeah, and that basically lends to, what makes sense for you. Every school has their qualities, and it just depends on what makes sense for the individual person and how it works for them.
To me, I think everyone has to evaluate where they are in their lives. I do think that, trust me, I fully believe in online education. I do also think that sometimes people use it as a way out and as a cop-out. And frankly, one of the biggest misconceptions I've ever heard is that online classes are easier than on-ground classes.
That is so not true.
It is absolutely not true.
That is not true.
Because not only, maybe if you're a self-motivated person, maybe they are. But honestly, it's very difficult with the crazy world that we live in to be able to be successful in an online environment if you are not really ready to do it.
Right.
I think a lot of people, and again, I've taught it at other schools too, so it's certainly not just something here. I think a lot of people go into it thinking, for whatever, I don't know why people thought of this in the first place, but I think a lot of people going into this saying, this is going to be easy. It's not. College is not easy. I don't care what modality it is, and frankly, and I'm going to be honest with both of you and our listeners, part of the reason I'm going to IUP, I'm literally going to IUP. I'm not having online classes. I'm driving there because I know that that's how I prefer to learn.
Me
and
too.
I think that that's really what it is. I think we all need to recognize how we prefer to learn. And you know what? Online might be more convenient, but you're not going to get as much out of it if you don't prefer to learn that way.
Right.
I would prefer that as a way to learn, the communication. So the class we're in doing our podcasts and the face-to-face situation has been way more beneficial in a way.
Okay, you're listening to Angena and Kim. College, is it really worth it? We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're listening to College, Is It Worth It? With Angena and Kim. And this segment, we are going to talk about possibilities to make paying college a reality, which we all know is a huge thing, paying for college. We all struggle with it after we graduate, and we all try to figure out how we're going to pay for college. And everyone has their tricks and has different things that they use to figure out how they're going to pay for college. Kim, do you have any insight? Do you have any, things that you use or any plans that you have for paying for college?
Many moons ago, I was married. I was married for a while. I was a stay-at-home mom, and I had my big dream about continuing my degree. And I went to massage school, and I paid that off. And I went to medical assistant school, and I didn't pay that off, but I'm working on it. I told you guys before I wanted to be a nurse. Always been, clinical. When I did enjoy the taking of the blood and all that. But anyway, that I'm also enjoying this communications degree as well. So, exploring my writer side and all that, which, I'm hoping, will get me into some scholarship ideas. But right now, I racked up, let's say, $20,000, $25,000 in student loans for just trade school.
Now, I know you're a working adult. Does your job have any type of tuition assistance?
That's how I'm doing it.
Okay. So your job
So
does
right now, when I was married, my financial situation was different. So student loans was pretty much my only option. Now that I'm divorced and poor, I can get a little more assistance with the grants. And also, my company is progressive, forward-thinking, and supportive of obtaining degrees or any certifications that would increase your value and marketability and experience and knowledge within the company. They have a mindset that everyone has their own specific expertise that they bring to the table, and there might just be that one little pod of information in my brain that they need at some point to get that contract. So it's really a great environment or culture to work for. And so, I basically have about 2.5 years of school. I'm only taking 2 classes per term. And I will probably come out of that with less than $3,000 in loans.
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
I'm just ballparking it.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, because I can probably pay for almost all 4 of my terms with my tuition assistance and grant.
Wow, that is amazing. I thought I was doing well. You have beat me by a long shot.
I'm very happy about that because I still have that medical assistant to pay for.
Well, I did want to bring up to the listeners that if you work for a government agency or a nonprofit organization, you may be able to receive loan forgiveness under what is called the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. And it's really helps me out because if I work for a government agency, and as long as I continue to work there's certain agencies, it doesn't really matter what you do, it's who you work for. And once you make 120 qualifying monthly payments under the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, after you make those 120 payments, you're done. They will pay the rest of that for you. And you can find this information on the Federal Student Aid website under, like I said, Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program.
That's cool. I like that idea.
So, Professor Miller, now you have been going to school forever. You're still in school, actually.
Well, technically, I don't start till next September, but I was in school. I was in school for 4 years in Slippery Rock, and I only went part-time when I was in grad school, so I was in grad school for 5 years. I know that it was a 2-year program, but I was only going part-time because I was working full-time, as you guys. So, yes, I was in school for about 10 years already, and I'm probably going to be in school for another 5.
I love school.
I'm going back.
I think don't you
You're
have
already back.
Don't you have
I'm
an
going back
idea
after
for
this.
me for maybe covering the rest of that tuition that I can't?
Well, of course.
Besides the loans, there's another option you had for me when we did our class registrations.
A big thing that a lot of people don't think about is scholarships. I think a lot of students of any age think that scholarships are just for young people, or that maybe they wouldn't qualify for scholarships. The most important thing that I'd like to share with the listeners today is the difference between grants and scholarships. I think a lot of people have some misconceptions. Number one, grants, scholarships, both free. Number two, the big difference is grants are need-based, based on your financial situation. Scholarships are not. Mm-hmm. You could be the richest person in the world and you can still get a scholarship to go to a college. Now, a lot of people, when they think scholarships, they're thinking of athletics, because I think that's a lot of how we think about them. Athletics are just a drop in the bucket as far as different types of scholarships. Now, most schools, and obviously Central Penn's one of those schools with the Education Foundation, most schools have internal scholarships that they give for a wide variety of things. But there are millions of scholarships out there. If you just go honestly to Google and just type
overwhelming.
Just type in scholarships, it's going to give you a list of some really awesome places to start. But what else is useful is by filling out the FAFSA, they can actually, by taking your demographic information, they can forward you some scholarships as well. So my daughter is going into being a senior.
Wow, I didn't even know you had a daughter.
Yeah,
oh,
she's
great.
16.
Oh, wow.
And so she wanted to get a job this summer, and I said, I'll tell you what, here's your job. I'm going to give you $5 for every scholarship application you fill out. And so she liked that. She liked that idea because I worked when I was younger, and I wish I would have put more time into research of scholarships. And so that's what her summer job's going to be, is looking
You're
up
like
scholarships.
a guru of scholarships.
Yeah, but depending on where she goes and what she's going for, which she doesn't have
I
either of
need
those
you
answers
this
yet.
summer. My daughter's going into her senior year.
Well, it's always good to be valued. I appreciate that. But in all seriousness, if it's one thing, I know that we're running out of time on the podcast today, but if there's one thing that I want to share with the listeners, it's you have to look up scholarships. No matter what major you're in, no matter what gender you are, no matter what your financial situation is, scholarships are there and often go unclaimed. I've actually worked with some places I've been placing interns that had scholarships, and literally no one claimed them. No one even applied.
Wow.
It's pretty crazy. So
Do you have to write an essay for all of them?
most of them, yeah, that's how you're evaluated.
That's why I'm so happy I'm in communications.
Well, and both of your writing is excellent. So.
Yeah. Well, to wrap it up, I just want to say that, when choosing your college, it's going to be a personal thing. It's important for any student to research the school they plan on attending. Whether it's online or traditional, you have to do your research. You want to research admission rates, graduation rates, employment rates of the student after they graduate. You want to know how many students graduated from that college.
And by law, colleges have to give you that information.
So that's really important. And also another thing I wanted to touch on is the school's accreditation. A lot of employers look at that. I look at jobs and they say, we'll only take, accredited colleges. So you want to, if that's something that's important to you and it's going to be something that is in the field that you're going into, that's something that you want to look at. And also the faculty and that teaches the courses, are the faculty properly trained? So those are some things that you want to definitely look at when you're evaluating the college, online or traditional. So I want to thank everybody for listening to our podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate being involved in this. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. This is Angena, Kim, and Professor Miller, and you are listening to College Is It Worth It?